and welcome, welcome. Today, we're here with another edition of The Studio Life, and you're here with me, Mark Nicholas. We're going to talk to an amazing comedic genius, somebody who's brought something incredibly special and iconic to all of us. And what you may not know is that this did not come from a place of ease. It wasn't naturally who he was. When he met with Cheech, he created something brand new, and it evolved until it became what you became familiar with. And so it's very, very special to talk to this actor, director, and iconic business genius, Tommy Chong. He's almost here with us, so hang out for a couple seconds. So Tommy, how are you?
I'm excellent, man. Couldn't be better.
Oh, I love the guitars. So cool.
Yeah, they're all for sale, by the way.
Oh, so basically, we are celebrating being kind of in that creative space. It's sort of the fun part of the studio life, and
Sure.
so to me, talking to you is perfect. First of all, I've followed your stuff forever, so that's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Probably before I should have. I think.
No, I don't know about that. We were like a great babysitting uh, uh, duo. You know, the babysitters. As soon as the parents left, they would put on Up and Smoke. You know, and of course, all the kids they were babysitting loved it. You know, no matter how, because we were silly enough to entertain young kids. You know.
Well, that's right. That's what you did. Before I knew what you were talking about, I was
Yeah.
reciting your lines.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There were kids who got in trouble at school because they would, do Sister Mary Elephant as their, their entertainment for the class.
Hmm.
And of course, they'd be sent home or reprimanded or talked to. But kids, do anything for a laugh. The class clown. Well, that's what Jim, what's his name? Uh, Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Carrey.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's how he got started. He was a class clown.
Class clown, and then next thing you
You
know.
know, so- yeah, next thing you know, he's a zillionaire.
Okay. So now, the focus that I wanted with you, because it's kind of the stuff that comes in our studio every single day, is sort of the dreamer, and I'm curious because I read a fair bit of your book. Actually, I found it.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a musician,
Yeah.
you were a comedian,
Yep.
an actor.
Yep.
Were you a business person?
Director, a movie director.
No, yeah, certainly a director, but
No, I directed movies. I got my card. I was a director. Business wise, terrible. Terrible.
Did you look at creativity like a business, or when you were in the strip club or in the comedy clubs and all that, was it just a creative energy that brought you there, or was it?
It was. I accomplished things that people before me couldn't do. For instance, the strip club that I ended up inheriting, it was given to me. Uh, I had previously, well, actually, refused work in that particular club. Uh, they weren't. I wasn't what they were looking for in the beginning when they were trying to do a dinner club, you know. But when I got successful with the After Hours Club, which was also a gift. You see, there was we when you get a band, you get a reputation around town. Okay, these guys are they're a pretty good band, and you can bring a crowd. And so with the After Hours Club, it was the guy that owned the building. He approached us and said, "Would you guys like a club, a nightclub?" And of course, I said, "Absolutely," because we never even had a place to rehearse, And so the first few months of the owning the club, it was just a rehearsal space for us because we never had any money to advertise, what we were, and it was so serendipity in a sense that we were under the radar Totally. In the beginning, no one was coming to the club. Therefore, we never attracted any interest from the government or the city inspectors or anything. And we never had a liquor license. And so we weren't under any kind of rules by the Liquor Control Board. So we were ignored, and by the audience too. We had to take outside gigs in order to support our habit of just not being paid, if you can imagine. But eventually, the reputation grew. I met my now wife, but she was just a friend, a neighbor actually, and it was by accident. We invited her down to our club, but her and her sister would rather go to the popular club, and so that we dropped them off at the popular club, and they wouldn't let them in because they were too young, and I think they were barefoot too at the time, so they weren't allowed in the club, and so. In the meantime, we had invited them down to our club, and so the girls, both of them, said to anybody that was listening, because they're very hot chicks, and so they actually brought the whole crowd from that one club down to our club, pipered them down, and that club stayed full from that day on, every night of the week, 7 days a week. We never closed, and it was after hours, so when the liquor license, when the liquor places closed, we were open, and you bring your own bottle or you bring your own whatever you did, and so we were extremely successful. And then when you get successful like that, you attract acts that want to play in front of a nice crowd, and so it just boomeranged that way. And because the club was so successful, the friend of mine, the family that owned the dinner club in Chinatown, they said, "Hey, why don't you take over our club too, and just pay rent?" And we said, "Okay." And because they owned the building, so we took over that club, all included, tables, everything included. Just walk in and turn on the lights, basically, and away you go. Now, the strip club was doing really well. It was the first strip club in Western Canada, and so we beat all the odds again because we're in Chinatown, and we weren't making a lot of noise. We were ignored. We got under the radar, and so next thing you know, the strip club's doing pretty good. It had the same strip club problems, bikers and horny men and hookers, and all the things, all that comes with it. The fighting, the alcohol, the whole trip.
Right.
I get fired from Motown, and so I come back to work to basically put another band together. Or I didn't know what I was going to do, but I could concentrate on the clubs, and so I started working in the strip club as the light man. Because the thing when you own a club, it's not romantic in the sense that you sit at the boss's table and just hold court. No, when you own a club, you're spending a lot of time fixing toilets, unplugging toilets, trying to round up staff, waiting tables if your waitresses don't show up. All that thing, doing the door, everything, and so when we started the strip club, I started working the lights, and then I saw I saw the possibilities, because we had the strippers would come in with their street clothes looking gorgeous, and then they would put on their trashy outfits, and now they look like strippers, too much makeup and the whole thing. Now that was good for the single guys, but I had other aspirations for the club, because I'd seen improvisation in Second City down in the States in the committee, and I saw this great improvisational acting, and so I changed the strip club into an improvisational nightclub, and we never told anybody.
So,
One day the bikers came to see strippers, and next thing you know, they're in a theater watching theatrical productions.
oh, that's
It
funny. Did
was
they stay? Were they like waiting for the strippers to come out the whole time?
well, we tricked them. The first, I would say, we kept a percentage of them, but these are horny guys, and bikers, and hookers, pimps, and so on. And so it wasn't their playground. And so eventually we changed the crowd from a really rowdy biker type thing into a theater, a legitimate theater, and we were packing them in, but we never had enough sense, or we had sense not to overcharge, and so as the more crowded it became, the less money we made. And so my brother actually fired us. And that's how Cheech and I got together, because Cheech and I were the only ones that wanted to keep doing the theater thing. And so when we were thrown together like that, next thing you know, we got a comedy team, Cheech and Chong. We tried to put a band together, but we did so much comedy in the beginning, we never played a note. and so that's how Cheech and Chong was born. And business wise, again, it was very serendipity with me. My life has never been about money, ever. To me, being poor, growing up poor, that money appeared when we needed it, and that's how I still operate today. My son and my wife take care of the finances, and she was my girlfriend at the time. I was married, and I'm still really good friends with my first wife, but my current wife, Shelby, she really was the brains behind everything I did. As young, she was still in high school, and she was telling me she was the one that made the After Hours Club popular, because we had a good singer in there one time, and then he left. He was like a ghetto rat, and so he left unexpectedly one night, trying to steal some of the drums, and it was like ghetto stuff. And a month later, he wanted to come back, and she was the one that had me hire him back, because he was such a good singer. And when we hired him back, within days, we got discovered by Motown, and that's how we went to Motown, based on the singer. Bobby Taylor was so good. If you get a chance, Google a song called "Been So Long" by the Pastels.
Okay.
And Bobby Taylor was the lead singer. He's not listed as the lead singer because he was doing a ringer. It was an amateur night, and you're supposed to be in the armed services to enter the contest, but there was a money prize, and so these people hired Bobby, and give him a phony ID to see he was in the service, but he did cut a record called "Been So Long," and it never won. It came in second, I think, but it's on Google or wherever you can get it. So "Been So Long" by Bobby Taylor, by the Pastels.
By the Pastels.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, did you want to be funny more than you wanted to be successful at being funny? Like, what drove you? Were you looking for, was the funny just a part of who you are, or were you actually trying to figure out how to fit into that business creative world? I know, you ended up connecting with the Rolling Stones, I believe, right? Was it Stone?
Yeah. We had moments with everybody, including most of the Beatles except Paul. No, what it was, when you're playing music, when you're into, like, say, jazz, you evolve from, say, the blues or jazz, you learn how to improvise. number one. But you also got to learn how to hear what's being played. And so it's an art that like if you talk to any really good musicians, you'll find a comedian there somewhere, because they're all like jazz musicians, especially. They collect jokes like people collect gold coins, you know, because a good joke is like a good tune, you know. It's magic because it's so dead on. It's so much truth in that, and it's always in front of your face, you know. But it takes that genius comic writer or musician to hear it, you know, and to separate it from the rest of the noise that you hear in the world. And so my musical training in association, because when you're playing music, especially in nightclubs, you know, you get exposed to comedians on their way up or on their way down. And you get exposed to people that used to be famous, you know, singers and that, and now they're on their way up or on their way down, you know. And you're the musician, you're the backbone, you're the guy that helps them do whatever they do. So I was exposed to a ton of floor shows, because that used to be the thing in the 50s. You'd have a floor show, you'd have a jukebox, a band, and a dance floor. And in between floor shows, and the reason you had floor shows is so people would sit down and you could feed them drinks, you know, while they're sitting. You see, you can't do that when they're dancing. You see, when they're dancing, they'll grab water, you know, but when they're watching the show, they'll drink. They'll drink. And so the idea of a floor show was to always have people sitting and watching. And comics were the best for that, because the comic could make a lousy show. Say it was a stripper or whatever, you know, that wasn't that beautiful. Well, you get the comic in there, he'll change everything, change the vibe. And so as a backup musician and not a leader, I got to study all these comics. And so I learned timing just by watching, just like you would do it with music. And so next thing I know, I got a backlog of bits that I used with Cheech and Chong. For instance, when Cheech, when we came to LA, we were playing in the Valley in Encino, and it was for a dance club, which I was very aware of, you know. So I knew, you know, the hazards, because when you go to a comedy club, they're there to laugh, but when you go to a dance club, they're there to dance, you know. And so rather than loving the comic like they do in comedy club, the dancers actually hate the comic. You know, he stopped them from doing their thing.
Stop the act.
Yeah. So Cheech and I were at this dance club, and the first show did not go over because we just came from Canada, and so I said to Cheech, "Come on, you're from this area. There must be a character that they can relate to." And Cheech said, "Yeah, there is." Now he denies it's now, but I was there. I knew what happened, and he said, "Yeah, there is a character, but you know, I hate to do it." I said, "Why? What's the matter?" And he said, "Well, it's kind of detrimental to the Latino, the Chicano community." And so I, as a comedian and as a club owner, I said, that's our job, dude. You know, that's what we're getting paid to do. You know, make fun of yourself, make fun of your people. And so then he showed me the lowrider character. And then I used a bit that I learned from watching all the black comics, you know, and then we incorporated the two. And the minute Cheech became Cheech, you know, the Chicano, then it was written. You could hear the dancers, especially. They went from hating us to loving us, to the point where they didn't want us to get off stage. They loved us so much. And it was all because Cheech hit them with a character that they saw every day, but never on stage. And see, before Cheech did Pedro, all the Chicano humor was done by Jewish guys, you know, Bill Dana, for instance, you know, and was all other comics doing their bad version of some Latino. But Cheech was there was what's his name, Paul Rodriguez, but Paul was just on the very edge of, you know, he was the first one with the knife talking about being a Chicano. He was the first stand-up. But Cheech and Chong, I mean, we were the first superstars, you know, that came and we changed the world.
Fascinating. So I'm curious because I just read quite a bit about Gilbert Gottfried and some others that ended up kind of finding their traction somewhere along the way. If the characters that you became iconic, that you became identified with, hadn't stuck, would you have continued to evolve your comedy act, or was that simply who your comedy act was?
Well, when you start off comedy, you start out with a gang of people, you know, doing open mic nights. You're just part of a gang, a whole bunch of people, and they're all looking for that magic sauce, you know. Well, when Cheech and Chong came along, because of our approach, you know, our improvisational acting approach, we evolved past the stand up, the normal stand up. Hey, how's your drink? You know, kind of thing. And then I had to learn that after when Cheech and I broke up. I flailed around for about a year. You know, I was trying to do movies. I was just looking for something, and then I realized uh, Dennis Miller, actually from Saturday Night Live, he performed live in Vancouver and at a small night comedy club, which I knew really well, and so I went down and seen Dennis Miller, and he was the one that inspired me to go up on my own, you know, without Cheech, uh, and uh, and then I learned how to do stand up. You know, I had to start from scratch. You know, 5 minute sets at the open mic nights, and I loved it. I loved it because you know, I came in with a lot of notoriety. You know, in fact, once I got booked, I had a manager, and I fired him right away because I told the manager, I says, "Listen, I've only got, you know," and I was still, no matter what, where I started, I was still Chong, the Cheech and Chong, you know, and done movies, blah blah blah, and so when they started hiring me, you know, they wanted me to be the headliner, you know, and I never had enough time. I sure the hell learned real fast. I, the first gig I got, man, I literally had 5 minutes, and I stretched that into 7 minutes, and then they put the comics that were on before me up after me, you know, to give a show. I'm in the broom closet trying to write another couple of bits. it was it was pretty funny, but it was so much fun. I've never, you know, when you're a stand-up comic, uh, especially starting the way I did, you know, because I started with a huge name, you know, Cheech and Chong, and here's Tommy Chong, blah blah blah, packing the joint, and they're just ready for me, anything. And so I used to go to the Gold's Gym a lot, and I, you know, training, because that's what I did, especially when Cheech and I broke up. I was really in the gym a lot, and there was a photographer named Artie Zeller. He was like one of the most famous photographers, and he was like a wannabe comic. And so he would come into the gym and he'd see me and he'd come over and he'd entertain me with all these jokes and all these bits, which I could remember. You know, I'd hear one thing, you know, that when I'd hear a joke one time, okay, I got it, and so I started doing his bits on the, you know, when I was doing shows, I was doing I was doing a lot of his jokes because that's all I had. And he one day he came up to me, he's, you know, I've been giving you jokes for over a year now. You never gave me one back. And I said, yeah, I know. I don't have any to give you. I need everything you give me. I use it, But he was really sweet about it. but that, it's a gift that I have, and because it's like the musical thing, I've got uh, an ear, a natural ear. I can hear tunes. I just hear them. I tried my best to read music, and I don't have the patience, and thank God, because once you become a real good musician, man, you're trapped. That's it. You can be. In fact, the guitar player that wrote "You're My Eye," Gay DeLorme, uh, he was probably the funniest human alive as far as I was concerned, and Cheech too. Cheech and I both owe almost our entire act to Gay DeLorme. That was his name, because he by far was one of the funniest individuals on the planet. But he was also one of the greatest guitarists on the planet. He was the guy that made Billy Stevie Ray Vaughan just come back and do that again. Let me see what. He was that good of a musician, and he was known in Canada. And then, like I said, he wrote that "Earache My Eye," Cheech and Chong's biggest hits. He wrote it. He wrote the music. I wrote the lyrics. And Cheech sang it. And to this day, it should get us in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it really was a tune that it was a jazz rock song with the circle of fifths changes in the middle of it, which was unheard of for rock and roll. But Gay DeLorme, his humor, oh my God, he spent a lot of time in fact, he learned how to play guitar in jail. He was a juvenile delinquent. And I think, I didn't get all the details, but I think he was robbing houses, breaking into houses and robbing them. And so he went to Bowen, Alberta. It's a juvenile home, and they had a guitar there, and he'd have to fight to get a hold of the guitar, because once he got a hold of a guitar, his whole life changed.
Did you ever connect music? Like I remember reading about Tommy Smothers of the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah.
Who had a character that, very aloof, whatever you want to call it, was kind of like almost just out there and cute.
Well, kind of retarded.
Yeah, but one of the smartest, what went into that was tremendous musicianship, tremendous intellect.
Yes, totally.
And that you couldn't pretend to be a bad piano player without being a great piano player.
Yeah.
And exactly. In a sense, that's kind of where I kind of started. I mean, your creative stuff, it's like this big bucket, and then it translates into a character that seems, very similar in some ways to Smothers.
No, I copied. I'll tell you. I'll tell the world. I was influenced big time by Tommy Smothers. Big time. In fact, the first bit Cheech and I did, I swear to God, I was channeling Tommy Smothers. Dave's not here. Where Cheech is trying to get in the room, and I'm keeping him outside because I'm just brain dead. Who is it? And it's me, man. Come on, open up. I got the stuff. And then I just. Smothers, definitely, Tommy, big influence. I met him one time. I met the Smothers Brothers one time, and they were kind of shell shocked because I don't know if you knew what happened to them, but who was it? Ringo? Was it Ringo? Ringo Starr and somebody else. Who was it? Was it John Lennon? Oh no, Harry Nilsson, the singer.
Mm-hmm.
It was Harry Nilsson and John Lennon. They went and watched the Smothers Brothers. They're doing a big comeback, and they were at the Troubadour, and Lennon and Nilsson sat in the audience and heckled the Smothers Brothers to the point where they literally, the audience really wouldn't go with them, and that was the end of their comeback. It was when I heard about it, it was brutal. But that's where Lennon was at that time, you know, like anti-war, anti-establishment, anti-everything. And Nielsen too. He was another like a shit disturber, you know, of the highest. But they shot down the Smothers Brothers. They I guess they equated the Smothers Brothers with the establishment, which they were in a lot of ways, you know, because they were, you know, like folk singers. when Cheech and I started doing the open mic night, our favorite open mic night was at the Troubadour. It was supposed to be open mics for the folk singers, but you'd have like a line of folk singers, and then Cheech and Chong would come out there, and you talk about a pent up audience wanting to laugh. we do our crazy comedy, and they would be like on the floor because and so when Cheech and I went on the road, we started using folk singers to open for us because the audience would hate the folk singers so much that they would love Cheech and Chong. It was kind of cold blooded, but you know what folk singer introduced his band at our gig? Bruce Springsteen.
Really?
Yeah. His first gig with the band, E Street Band, was opening for Cheech and Chong. And because I remember, because the club owner says, "Now I know you want a folk singer, but we got a folk singer that has a band. Do you mind?" And I said, "No, not at all." And so Clarence, the sax player, he told me one time I met him. He says, "You guys were the first." You know, opening for you guys was the first time we played together as a band, because Bruce was a folk singer, but he's so intelligent. You know, the guy was like Dylan. You know, they're just head and shoulders above everybody else. You know, they're so ahead of the game. You know, period. You know, because both Dylan and Bruce, they did what was popular at the time. But then they also saw that folk singing guy was disappearing, you know, and the rock guys were coming out, and so they both went rock, you know, Dylan and Springsteen, and they're both very successful at it, you know.
It almost is this wealth of like pent up creative energy, the music, the, you know, all of this stuff, and then out comes, you know, something you know, so kind of unique. And Springsteen, of course, and Tommy Smothers. I mean, they were sort of one of a kind.
Oh yeah, oh totally.
Willing to take a chance to be that.
Well, the only difference, I think, was the road they took. You know, they went the straight route. You know, Ed Sullivan, kind of Johnny Carson. You know, well, Cheech and Chong, we took more the Lenny Bruce path. You know, I mean, we weren't allowed on Saturday Night Live, for instance. You know, and but they would have actors play Cheech and Chong on Saturday Night Live. That's how popular we are, you know, and that's how lame Lorne Michaels is, you know, because you know he's Mr. Straight. He's straight arrow, and I think when we had a choice, of course I was like the on what do you call it? I was the leader, but not really. You know, I was the unofficial leader of the Cheech and Chong. I made the decisions, you know. And the thing is, I named Cheech and Chong. You know, I asked Cheech, "Do you have a name?" Because we're looking for a name, and I said, "Do you have a nickname?" And he said, "Yeah, Cheech." And I said, "Cheech and Chong, perfect." And so it was my baby right from the beginning, you know, and
just like Tommy Smothers.
Yeah. He was the main guy. Yeah, he was the guy that had it all. Yeah, But they made the choice to go that straight route, and they're very proud of it, and good for them, But I took the Lenny Bruce road
And I'm
for
curious
more
about that
reasons.
because in the beginning of your book, you actually, you actually refer to the fact that with Lenny and the pot smoking, it kind of created this sort of a place. And Lenny was one of those guys, never afraid to. I mean, he intentionally would kind of get arrested.
Yeah,
Anti-establishment, pushback. I mean, you essentially, it's almost like you were the new Lenny Bruce, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. Well, in the book, or I don't know if I put it in there, but our first open mic night in Los Angeles. Now we've been working up in Canada, steady every night of the week for 9 months, and then we come down to LA, and because I knew Red Fox from my after hours club days, and and just the years of watching, going to any show Red did, I'd be there, in Vancouver. So I knew Red Fox really well, and so when I phoned it, when Cheech and I arrived in Vancouver, I mean in Los Angeles, Cheech immediately hooked up with his old buddies, college buddies, and he was off to Big Bear for a vacation kind of. And so I called him up. I said, "We got a gig. You got to come back." And he's, "Well, I'm in Big Bear." I said, "You got to get your ass back here. That's the only reason we're down here is to do these open mic nights." And so he came back, and so we went to the Red Fox Club. He wasn't there; he was on the road. And Norma Miller was the MC. And so when I told her the name of the group, she called us Geek and Gank. And here's his two guys, Geek and Gank. And so Cheech and I went on stage, and we did our crazy bits from the strip club, and the sex bits and everything else. And Lenny Bruce's whole entourage, without Lenny, was sitting in the audience. And that's Tony Viscara, his father-in-law. Tony had met Sally Marr. He lied, said he was 30, he was 18. She lied, said she was 40, and she was like 50. They both lied. They got married, went on a honeymoon for a year, and then, decided just to be friends because Tony was so handsome and he had girls up the yin yang, just waiting for him. But he was a heroin addict, and so Tony, when he saw Cheech and I for the first time, he came up to me, right up to me, and he gave me the compliment that still rang in my head for a long time. This is, you guys. He said, me, it's the closest thing to Lenny Bruce he saw since Lenny died. And that was, oh man, that was moving. That moved me to the point. Now we're stone ass broke, and Tony, because he's a heroin addict, he doesn't. He never have any, so he wanted to be our manager. So he was our manager. Actually, he did really well. He got us into these different open mic nights, the clubs. He knew where they were, and he got us gigs in the, we never got paid, but we definitely worked with all the other up and coming comics,
Right.
like the unknown comic. He was with the bag over his head. Yeah, there was a bunch that we started with.
So
And
one
it
of the
was,
things about Lenny, of course, this is his sort of, and I'm curious. I mean, you in a way became an advocate, like it or not.
yeah.
But inside, were you ever an advocate, or were you just trying to be you, trying to be the character, trying to be Cheech and Chong?
Well,
Because Lenny would keep getting arrested because he was advocating.
yeah, I ended up doing the time that Lenny never did. I ended up in 9 months in the slammer just because of that. No, when I found out that slot was open, I gladly took it. and for Lenny's sake too, because like Lenny, I could see the humor. That's what I loved about Lenny. He saw humor in everything, you know, like when he broke his leg or something, and falling falling out of a window, being so stoned, and then he had to go to court, and he had to get him in the elevator with the leg. Yeah, I mean, everything was funny with Lenny, and I love that. I love that part, and I had the same relationship with the police in Vancouver because of that, because I owned these clubs, and the cops knew that the musicians, especially, and 90% of the audience or the customers were all smoking weed, and they were like on the warpath trying to find people that smoking that horrible devil's lettuce or whatever they called it. I was in Vancouver when they busted the Four Tops. The Four Tops were playing at this big supper club in Vancouver, and they got high in the room, in their hotel room, and left the roach in the ashtray. And so the maid finds the roach, calls the manager calls the police. The police take the room next door to them, adjoining to them, and when they came back, they busted in the room and arrested everybody in there, including the Jewish comic, who kept saying, "I'm not with these guys. Come on, man. Do I look like one of the tops? I'm not a top. I'm a comic."
Oh, funny. So you
And
were
so
able to, just say, so you were almost advocating. So with Lenny, I mean, he said it, right?
Yeah.
But your advocacy, in a sense, was just by being you,
Yeah,
normalizing or something.
Well, I was never a junkie at anything. I tried everything. I tried, and the only thing that I really liked, but again, if I had to quit, I quit, was marijuana. Because when I first started smoking weed, I got turned on to Lenny Bruce and a joint at the same time. But that was it. It was Calgary. So I had the joint. When the joint was gone, that was it. There's no more weed, and nobody the phone. And besides, I I grew up poor, and so whatever money I made, I'd either give it to my mother, or for the back rent, because I always owed the family everything, and so I never had a budget where I could buy anything. Uh, Everybody else bought. We were more into beer back then, especially in Canada, and we knew where a bootlegger was. But my dad and his friends and they're the ones that had jobs, and they were the ones that could go to the bootleggers and throw money around. We never had money. Like I said, if I got any money, I'd just give it to my mom and say, okay, that's for the back rent, and then, oh, by the way, I need some for bus fare or whatever, you know. But it's amazing how far I got without spending anything. And when I was in San Francisco, when I saw the committee, I think that was the only place where I had to come up with the entrance fee, to get in, the cover charge. And I did it a couple of times with the committee, and I did it once with Jazz Workshop, where I saw Coltrane. But other than that, I would just cruise the boulevard. We weren't working, but I couldn't stay at home, watch TV. I had to get up with the action. And the people in San Francisco, it was jammed. All the Broadway streets were jammed so much you had to walk on the road, and people are going from club to club. And now I heard Lenny. He was at I forget what it's called, jazz work, not the Jazz Workshop, but he was at a club in San Francisco. Now I couldn't afford the cover charge or the drinks, so I went to the kitchen and I sat in the doorway in the kitchen, and I could hear Lenny, doing his act, and it was such an exciting time.
Yeah.
At that time, because I saw all the greats, man. I saw John Coltrane at his best, then I heard Lenny, and then the committee itself. Oh my God. They were, I mean, the actors, Howard Hessman. Howard Hessman to this day, you know, Johnny Fever on KRP or whatever it was.
Right.
He hated me. he hated Cheech and Chong, like all those guys did, because
Right.
they were these actors that were doing this acting, but they were doing improv acting, like at a carnival, basically.
We have people here in the studio who come in all the time with these ideas, and it seems like so much has been done already. It's so hard to be unique.
Oh,
It seems like so many characters have been done, and that we live on this world of extreme. Where do you think it's possible for there to be another Cheech and Chong, somebody else that's as extreme and as funny and able to change the way we see things? Is it still possible to be that?
we're unique individuals, every one of us. So you can't. The trouble. One of the troubles with our society, to me, is that we become file clerks. You label something and you put it in the file and then you put it away, but you don't really examine what you're labeling. You know, you're just putting, you're like stocking in a supermarket. You know, the apples with the apples and the pears with the pears, and you stock it, and then your job's done. Well, people do that with everything, with movies, with actors, with everything. They find a file for it. Oh, he's you know, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, you know.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, sorry.
So what do you tell somebody like again, we're in the studio where it's like dreams. Everyone's got dreams. But if somebody wanted to become iconic, you know, what are the chances they have to take? Like, what do you tell them? Like, you know, you know, is it a go for broke, or is it, you know, what's the lesson? Because you came across the border with no money, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, not only no money, I had debt. I was married. I had kids. I had family. I had good people. I always tell people, you know, behind every successful musician is either a mother or a girlfriend that paid the rent the whole time the guy was struggling. You know, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. First of all, you got to get rid of the ego. You know, because you got to. There's nothing that. My dad was a big influence on me because he was racist in his own way. He's Chinese, born in Canada, but when I brought my first black girlfriend home, we were just dance partners. He grabbed me and pulled me in the kitchen and goes, son, she's black. And so I said, Dad, you're Chinese. He never caught the thing because, you know, Chinese can be the most racist people on the planet, same as the Japanese. You know, they're elitist. You know, anything that's elitist, you know, and education will give you an elitist form, you know. So and then the poor Americans, the only thing they got going for themselves is their white skin. You know, at least I'm not black. You know, at least I'm, you know, not Mexican. You know, but other than that, you know, it's a even playing field. We're given who we are as a challenge. See, life is a challenge. Life isn't meant to be smooth, and if you look at anybody's life that is going smooth in that's where you'll see them taking their own lives, you know, with fentanyl or some stupid sport or something, you know, some craziness, you know, because one thing poverty will do, as Red Fox used to say, you can't commit suicide jumping out of a basement window, you know, and basically poverty will give you the impetus to listen and find out where the food is, find out where the work is, find out where everything is, you know, and then get there. What tell everybody is that there's an opposite. In order for anything to exist, you have to have the opposite. Other than that, it just is. For instance, when you look in the heavens and you see all these beautiful lights and sparkling and twinkle twinkle little star, well, that twinkle twinkle little star, there's so much of atomic explosions going on that we can see it hundreds of thousands of millions of light years away. That's how powerful those explosions and how you know physical this universe is. And that's what we are. We're in a very physical universe, and we're not here that long. But the one thing we are, every one of us is so unique, so special. And so if you're going to be a comedian, you're going to be a comedian. Nothing's going to stop you. Nothing. Because it's so easy to do, especially that's why I wanted to come to LA. I was in LA, and then I realized, oh, this is Hollywood. And so when I went to Detroit, Vancouver, Hollywood. This is where it's happening. And so what can happen to everybody has a shot. It's up to them, again, depending on what you did last time you were here. I think what happened to me was that I came very close last time I was evolved. But this time, wow, everything paid off. Everything. I'm so lucky. Like one time I was in Reno, Nevada, and I went down into the gambling joints. Yeah, just playing around. Cheech and I were together. And we had no wives there to tell us no. And so I went down and I put money on a roulette table. I just put it on red 19, and that number hit. And now that I think about it, it was probably fixed, and so I get all the winnings, and put it in my pocket, and I forget to take off the original bet, and it hit again. And then the guy goes, you better take advantage of it, man. You're on a roll. So I walked around and I ran that dollar to $5,000. And the only reason that I walked away with anything was that Cheech kept borrowing money off me. Because he would go broke and he'd borrow money and he'd go broke, borrow some more money. Mm-hmm. At the end, we were looking for spare change, anything. We were so broke. We were broke, and we had to literally, we just had enough money to take the cab to the airport. Other than that, we had no extra cash because we blew it all. But I learned, that it's the best thing you can do when you're successful, if you want to keep anything you got, is to hook up with a really good money manager. Yeah. And take those winnings and do something with it.
So, Tommy, I've had a great time talking to you, and because it's the studio life, of course, we have a line here at the studio waiting to come in, unfortunately. But there's so many lessons here, and the Lenny stuff and the advocacy, and I really want to thank you for everything. I mean, you've been a great babysitter to me from the beginning. So thanks, man.
Well, no, you're welcome. And it's still going on. I learned one thing. Everything happens for a reason. When Cheech and I broke up, that was hard. It was devastating, but I saw it coming. But that's the way my whole life has been. I saw it coming, and what it did, it opened another door. Cheech and I broke up, and then I said, "Wow, shit! I got to learn how to do this on my own." And so I went out and I became a stand-up comedian. I can do comedy anytime I want.
Well, thanks, Tommy. I really appreciate your time, my brother. And
okay, my brother. Love it.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Okay, brother.
So that's it. That was Tommy. Now, I don't have the words. He was not only an influence, but he was my babysitter. And so, like we talked about, this studio life, the studio existence, the creative storytelling, It doesn't just happen. It's something that evolves and forms until the people become who the outside world is familiar with. And so this was an unbelievably special moment for me. And I want to thank you all for joining us. And please come back and subscribe. We've got so many more of these coming. And it's been a pleasure, man, hanging out with Chong, you know? I mean, seriously.